Welcome to Series 7 of the Dig podcast, and I am your host, Caroline O'Neill. In this series, I am talking to business owners, entrepreneurs and experts who are sharing their journey and preparing us for the future. What does the working world look like in the future? It changes every week, every day, every hour. So tune in each week as I ask my guests how they are future-proofing their business. I am here in the Great Northern Hotel in Donegal, and I've just said to this great man beside me, I always looked up at the beautiful Great Northern, and when we were away and was like, wow, look at that hotel up there. I actually have never been in it until today, but grew up in Bundoran on holidays all my life, so it's such an honour to be sitting here with Brian McEniff, and I can't wait to hear all about his journey and how he has built his empire. And actually, whenever I've been doing my research for the podcast, which I always do, I always look online, for news articles and things that people have said about their journey. Very, very, very little. And Brian is well known in the GAA world, in Irish sports, for all the great reasons that everybody in Donegal knows. But for the business empire that he's built, very little. And I've just said that to him, and he said he hasn't really talked about it much online or in the press. So it's a great honour for me to be able to hear it straight from him today, and for you guys to hear it as well. McEniff Hotels include, so the group includes, and I'm going to look down just in case I miss anything, the Great Northern, the Holyrood, the Sligo Southern Hotel, Yeats Hotel, Westport Woods Hotel, and Dublin Skylon, the Skylon Hotel in Dublin. What an empire to say that you created. So that's why I was so excited whenever Brian said he would be on the podcast. He's also a father of 10, and many of the people that listen to the podcast are family people. They're all about their family, and they're trying to work and maintain a good family life. So we're going to talk to him about that as well, because that's definitely not easy, especially when you have a business of this size. He has handed his hotels over to his children, but he is still chairman of the group. So heads all the meetings, and definitely still very much involved. He studied hotel management in Dublin in 1962. I can't wait to hear what that was like. And then he went to Canada, where he gained valuable work experience in the Royal York Hotel in Toronto. I think he also met his lovely wife in Canada too. And they returned home here, and here we are today. A lot has happened in between, and I want to hear what that has looked like over the years. Brian, thank you so much for being on the Dig podcast.
Lovely to see you, Caroline.
Lovely to be here.
People always welcome in this hotel.
That's Brian and I were just catching up before we started, and Brian's mummy was from Carrickmore, isn't that right, Brian?
Very much a Carrickmore woman.
So you
never passed it.
So you feel a wee bit of the Tyrone blood in you there?
Oh, very much so. My first All-Ireland semi-final was to go on a train from Carrickmore to support Tyrone in an All-Ireland semi-final in 1957.
Wow.
Wow, I was right.
You have all those memories. Definitely a great place. Plenty of Carrickmore people listen to the podcast as well. Brad, they're all going to be tuning in. But I did say there that, and take me back to the early days, Brian. So you did study hotel management. What was that like in the 1960s? What type of thing were they learning you at the hotel management course?
My mother had 4 boys, and I was the youngest of the 4 boys. So Sean had married a local school teacher and gone out on his own. So she sent for her brother, the priest. I wanted to do accountancy, but they decided that they wanted me to do hotel management. So I done the entrance exam and I got in. And
just to go back there, why did she send for the priest?
Because I was a strong-willed sort of a young man, and Father Brian Begley from Carrickmore, he came down to help me along and make my decision.
Okay.
And it was an easy decision, really, because I suppose my father, was somewhat older than my mother, and they needed help in the hotel. There's no doubt about that. And my brother Pat, who was 3 years into dentistry, he probably would have been prepared to give it up. But my father, there was no free education then. My father didn't want to spend so much money and take him out of the hotel management because he was more interested at that particular stage.
And so your mum and dad already had a hotel in Donegal, is that right?
The Holyrood Hotel.
The Holyrood.
It had 12 bedrooms at the time. It was a small little unit, but very precious then because they bought it in 1951 and they built it up over the years, and it was something that I always aspired to.
Yeah.
Particularly the rise of my mother from County Tyrone. My father was a quiet man from Monaghan, but she was a the leading light in the family at that particular time. She was a very strong-willed woman, being a Carrickmore woman naturally.
Of course, it's definitely there and all the Carrickmore women that I know anyway. But so you went off to Dublin, and what's a hotel management course like in 1960s?
In 1960 I went.
Right. What were they teaching you, Brian, then?
They're teaching how to cook, how to be at the dining room, how to be at reception, anything that was involved in the hotel, and accountancy as well, which I love that part of it. And just to get things right now, I was 18 and I met my wife. I was playing a piano at a Christmas party. She's a good Irish dancer, a good West Cork woman. And that was the love of my life at that early stage. She was a year ahead of me, so a year older than I. And when I wanted to go for experience, I applied to Fitzpatrick's Hotel and I applied to Great Southern Hotel, but wages were very small. They were between 30 bob and £2 a week. So I decided, instead of going to Switzerland, where a lot of hotel management students at that time went, I thought I'd go to the far side of the Atlantic. I didn't want to go to Uncle Sam to go to Vietnam to fight, so I went to Canada, which was the next best thing. I had contacts over there as well in Toronto, so that was a very big help to me.
That was a big step too, way back then, to go there, wasn't it?
I remember taking the boat out from Dublin to Glasgow, and from Glasgow then to Quebec, and then docking at Montreal and taking the train to Toronto. And Bobby Anderson Ballyshannon met me there and brought me into the Royal York the following day. They were always looking for employees. I was offered a job at front desk, but the lad that came out with me at the time, John Rooney, he wouldn't work unless I was working the same shift, so I had to change my shift. So my shift wasn't a great shift, it was 4:30 to 12:30. But at least I was going in and out in the subway with John every day, and that was very happy for him and very happy for me as well. A good decision.
And how important were those days in learning the grit about the hotel industry, Brian?
Well, they encourage you to go to the kitchen, and the kitchen in the Royal York. There's 1,800 bedrooms in the Royal York,
Wow.
2,500 employees. It was the largest hotel in the British Commonwealth at the time. And it was a huge experience for a young boy coming in from the country. I was that excited. I cut my fingers twice my first day in the kitchen. But then I kind of fell on my feet because they opened a very exclusive after theatre restaurant in the Royal York, very exclusive. And I got to work on that with a chap from Yugoslavia who taught me a great deal of what I know now. And the head waiter was an Italian man, Louis Gianetta. And he was very good to me. Always plenty of tips for getting the food out good and quick, and because he was getting a lot of tips on the far side. And at that stage, Toronto Maple Leafs had a good hockey team, and they used to eat in there. So I got a ticket for the hockey match. Now it was way up in the gods, but I had good eyesight and I could see. Hockey was a big sport there over the winter period, and I got into it in a big way.
And what did they teach you? You said he taught you a lot. Who was the first man that you mentioned?
He was a fellow called John Zatkovich.
What did he teach you that you said is still with you today? What would you say?
He taught me economy.
Economy?
Economy, exactly. That
Right.
was good.
What do you mean?
He had come out of Yugoslavia where there wasn't a lot of food available and stuff like that there. How to economise and how to make the most of what you were doing. And it was marvellous because we were feeding a lot of people, just the two of us, in the kitchen. And then there was a small kitchen in the lower basement not the basement, but the lower basement of the Royal York Hotel. Very exclusive, I'd have to say.
And that exclusiveness, well, I can, like I said, growing up, we always looked up at the Great Northern and felt that there was an exclusiveness up there. Do you think you carried that home then to this hotel particularly?
Well, I hadn't this hotel at the time. I had a small hotel, the Holyrood.
Yes.
But I was crafty enough to know there was a whole different standard, required over there. It was a 5-star product over there. And it was very interesting. And what was great for me was there was a big convention floor. In fact, the Mayor's Ball was there the 1st January. I was over there. And I got to work in there. And it was Bobby Kennedy was the guest speaker at the guest. It was $100 a plate. And
that was in
1962.
$100 a plate, so a lot of money back then.
And he was a massive speaker. I stole out to listen to him. He was like Neil Blaine. He could speak without taking a breath. The hairs would stand in your head. And ironically, there was 3,000 fed that night. One of the waiters, he was an older man, took a heart attack and died.
Oh.
And it was just for an me, and I was actually slicing beef on a slicer. And between the sweat and the tears for seeing this man for an me, dead, and they could do nothing. They couldn't stop because all those people had to be fed. So he sat there, lay there for, I suppose, a good 10 or 15 minutes before he was taken away by the security people. It was an awful thing for a young boy of 19, 20 at the time. But it was a great experience working on the convention floor. I still love to go up. It was a unionised hotel, but I wasn't in the union because I'm a hotel management student.
And so to hear Bobby Kennedy, is Bobby Kennedy, you said?
Bobby Kennedy.
And
before Jack Kennedy died.
Yes, and to be part of that, definitely then you really felt your passion growing for the hotel industry, obviously.
Oh yeah, well, you know, it grew there as soon as you arrived in the Royal York when you seen it. Ironically, my son and John Rooney, who was a Sligo lad, it was on a Thursday we went in to check in, and we were early, and there's an Irishman in security who told us what to do. He says, go down to payroll. He says, to pay on a Thursday. So before we started, we got 2 days pay Thursday to Friday. So I went round the corner and opened 2 bank accounts at the Royal Canadian Hotel, or at the bank just around the corner.
Wow.
We opened 2 bank accounts for 2 days' wages.
And you didn't spend it straight away, Brian?
No, we were quite crafty. The Sligo man and myself, we banked a lot of our money. So as the time went on that particular winter, the winters were long and cold, and I decided I'd do a second job. So I went to the insurance company next door. I told them I had no job. So I got a job in the accountancy department. And that was great experience learning about accountancy in the insurance business. But I never told them I was working in the Royal York across the road at the particular time. So the only thing was I was paying tax on the double. So that wasn't so good at the particular time. But it passed the winter.
Yes, but you were always learning.
I was always learning.
And how important, there's a lot of people listening to the podcast, Brian, and, you know, and I had a conversation with somebody recently about this, where you need to know how to do nearly everything in your business before you hand it over to somebody else. Do you agree with that?
Well, every day you get up, you learn. And if you don't have that attitude, even in football,
yes,
sometimes you learn more in defeat in football than you do in success. But every day you get up, you learn. And that's very, very important.
Yes, and it sounds like you were learning every day from a very early age. So when then did you decide to come home? Because I want to hear about what happened when you got home.
Well, I came home in '65 because my brother Pat had met Tony McKenna, a man from Clogher who was teaching over there and who'd been in boarding in school with me at St. McCartney's. But he came back to repeat his leaving, and consequently St. McCartney's won the Rory Cup on the back of his great performances. And I remember the first day we talked out in Hyde Park in Toronto. I looked across the room and some man combing his hair before going out. I couldn't believe this. And I looked again, who was it but Tony McKenna. Now I only knew him superficially, but I crossed the room and I said, you're Tony McKenna. And he looked at me, he says, you're McEniff, because we all look the same. And ironically, playing on a separate teams on that particular day, and we struck up a great friendship. And Tony lived with me for quite a period of time when we went over there. Tony McKenna came home in '64, and he told me my father wasn't keeping that well. He found that hotel a struggle. He'd done a big job at the hotel. The contract was £15,000, and the extras cost £15,000, and it nearly drove him daft because he was a great letter writer for a man that hadn't any formal education. And everything time in the letter was this debt that was hanging over his head. So I said come home in '65, and I came home for 3.5 weeks to see my father and to give them a hand at the hotel. And I could see he was definitely struggling. So I told him I'd come back for the following season. But in intervening time, he took a stroke, and then he took a major stroke. So I came home right away thinking that I'd be burying him. But he made a recovery. And my brother, the doctor, told me that he'd give him 3 years. He got about 2.5. And he died of a massive heart attack. So I came home to my mother and the hotel.
And what happened? Like, I mean, how did you... So you were the one that was going to be taking over the reins then?
Yes. Found it difficult.
Right.
Coming to the city of Toronto, at Bundoran, it was a very, very short season those years. You only had the months of July and August. And it was very hard. But for the help of my eldest brother, Sean, and football. I got into the legal panel, and we had a great local team called St. Joseph's. And that kept me at home, plus my brother Sean. And of course the parents were there at the time, but my father didn't last that long.
Yes.
But I had my mother. She was a great, great help.
Yes.
And I also had my wife.
Of course.
May not forget.
I can see.
She's a strange name. She's
Cautie.
Cautie, Cautie. She's really Catherine.
Okay. Is that the Irish for
No, it's just a West Cork name.
West Cork, Cotty. Okay, anybody listening from West Cork will be able to recognise that, Cotty. I thought maybe it was the Irish for Catherine, but so she was by your side. So then you're in the Holyrood. Now we're talking, when I introduced you, the McEniff Group, where there's 6 hotels. So a lot has happened, Brian, to 2023.
Well, the tourism in this mid-late 60s grew just like that, a graph going up there. Everything was flying. And then the trouble started in Northern Ireland. And just you could see a downward trend for the following 5 years. It was so difficult. You couldn't sell bedrooms. And the season was short enough as it was. So we had a good singing pub. I started by my brother Pat. I told you who played with us for about 3 seasons. Paul Brady, the famous Paul Brady.
Yes.
And I finished up. I went back to learn piano and chords in the piano. There's a pianist from Derry, Stan Cawley. He had a band at this time from the waterside, and he taught me to play by ear and to play on all the keys, which was a help for the singing pub and the ballad sessions. And after a day's work, I'd sit down in the Holyrood at 8:30 and play to half past 11. And I found it a bit of a strain, but I was the only business that we could guarantee was the pub business.
And was that within the Holyrood?
Within the Holyrood. So
is there something in that though, and it still stands to this day, that you were creating an experience for people that were coming for the entertainment? And because when you're saying that, I'm like, well, I understand why they were coming to that, because you were creating that experience. It still stands today, that, doesn't it?
Very ironically, that when we started well, it was there, but I wanted to extend the season. So I started after Easter, and there was a man, Tommy Burness, from outside Strabane, and we pianist called Pat McRae, and they used to come in every Sunday. And for a favour each, they would play from 4 o'clock till 8. And they'd have a steak tea, and then myself and Liam Travers would take over. Liam was a local musician, wonderful musician. At that stage, he was playing guitar, and I was trying to accompany with him the piano. Now, when we started first, we done a Saturday and Sunday, and I'd get my mother and father to sit in the lobby to fill in space. My brother Sean was sitting across the road, and himself and his wife Ailish had come across, and there was a friend of Sean's, Eddie Fox, who was a retired bank manager. I get them in to sit space, and I'd open the window and I'd have the speaker out onto the street so people could hear it. So we built up the Saturday and Sunday, which was a big boon, to extend the season. And then I went to England and I discovered Wallace Arnold Tours, never heard tell of. And I got them over to call them, terrible name, EP Tours, Elderly Persons Tours. They were all over 70. But when you hear the price, 7 guineas for 7 nights, dinner, bed and breakfast.
Right.
So we got those to come in April, May, mid-June, and I picked up again mid-September to the end of October.
When you say you got them, what did you do?
When I went across with a Board Force promotion, and I met these people. They were based in Yorkshire, and they had an outlet in London as well. So it was a great boost to the off-season. There was very little money to be made out of it because they weren't drinking an awful lot, those elderly people. But at least it started to make the hotel busy. And that winter before my father died, I decided to build some extra bedrooms on, because I had enough bedrooms to accommodate the tours and the other people that were starting to grow a wee piece of business, because before that it was just July and August, and I wanted to extend the season out to May, June, July, August, September, October. It was a pipe dream at the time, but later proved right.
But you went searching for that.
I went searching for that.
There's a lesson in that. There's something in that too, because you can't just sit still when things perhaps are not growing. You're the one who made that happen, because you went to get that tour.
And then at that stage, every GA dinner dance would be around the area, and I was getting very poor share. I was at 3 dinner dances the first year and 5 the second year, so I was chasing the dinner dances as well.
And how did you chase them?
How did I chase
This is the old-fashioned way of doing it, but there's something in it.
I made contact with the secretary or the chairman and offered them, and I done it at a reasonable price. We sold it at a price originally. And we had a dinner dance every Friday night, and sometimes some Saturday night as well, from about the middle of October to April time, which was marvellous. It was a turnover, and it meant that we could employ staff on a permanent basis, because the first winter I went home, there was 3 staff there, and we had no work for the 3 staff. We had to let them go, so there was just myself, father, mother, and my wife doing the lot, serving the tables, washing the dishes, doing the lot. But gradually we built up a staff, and staff just stayed with us forever.
And back then, I'm sort of getting the feeling that it was never about the profit. Like you said, it was just about the turnover at that time,
Yes.
to try and get it built up.
Well, there was a debt lying there with my father that he hadn't serviced that particularly well, so the first thing was to get rid of the debt, which we accomplished.
How important is that? That's a big thing at the minute. People are talking about debt.
Debt was there, it was annoying my father greatly. He didn't want to be in debt. He'd never been used to being in debt. And we had that cleared off. And I remember we had £5,000 in the bank, which was a lot of money back then. And they were so happy. And I remember I went over to visit my mother's sister in Enniscrone in County Sligo just before Christmas. And she said, it's great that the boy's home and everything's so good. By God, the following February, 6 weeks later, he was dead.
Your dad?
Massive heart attack. Terrible, because I spent some of my early years in the farm in Carrickmore because my mother was a bit anemic and she's supposed to be down to the grandparents, and I loved going to Carrickmore. And then I went to boarding school in Monaghan, and then I went to college in Dublin, then I went to Canada. So I didn't really get to know my father like the other boys, and they all took a drink, and I didn't take a drink, and he enjoyed a drink, a social drink. And at that time, you wouldn't talk to parents really, which is rather sad. So there's so many things now that I've had him back for a day that I'd love to ask him.
What would you ask him? I feel like you're getting me emotional, but what would you ask him?
Well, he was born in Scotland, and his father died 5 months before he was born.
I read that last night.
And Uncle Terry, his Uncle Terry, went to Scotland, took them back to Newbliss, what they might have. And his mother was a seamstress. She had great hands as well, and she had 2 children. Katie is my father's older sister and himself. And she went to the States and came back and married a fellow called Pat McCloy. And he was an older man, and they had no child for 15 years. And unfortunately, she died this year. We used to call her Mary Martha McCloy, although her mother was Katie McEniff. So that was the only family on my father's side. So I never really got to ask him these questions. She married secondly, and there was a family called Brogans out of the second marriage. But his mother died quite young, and he was very attached to the mother, so he decided he would go to the States after Katie came home. But he came to Bundoran to say goodbye to Katie, and he went up the road to Barney Kelly's pub. And my mother was working in it. She was a nurse. And his wife had died, and they had no family, so she came down to help. And she met John McEniff, Lizzie Begley from Carrickmore. And that's the start of it. They got married and rented a wee shop on the main street.
What do you think he'd say now?
Well,
what do you think he'd say now about this group, the way you have 10 children and you've passed his legacy on to them?
Well, there was a couple of things happened. When we were home, we had a couple of children, and then we had a couple of more children. And he said to me one day, he said, what do you want to do? Do you want to populate the town?
You were looking to build a foyer with children.
We were living in a hotel at the time, which was rather difficult because I was only 6 months in Canada and bought a house. And the reason I bought a house, John Rooney was with me, and then I got another friend of mine, Brendan McHugh, who's since dead, to come out from London. He was working in London to play football, would you believe? And they took the finished basement in the house, and I had the house more or less free. But no, they were servicing the mortgage for me. And then, of course, I had to sell the house when I came back home, but that was part and parcel. So going to live in the hotel wasn't easy with a couple of children.
Oh my God, definitely not. And that's emotional now, and you're right about the relationship back then with fathers and sons.
Father and sons in Philadelphia, here I come.
Oh, I know, Gar, and
just
I know
that's
what it was.
Epitomised all about Irish people.
It does, and it still exists a wee bit today, but thankfully people are more open. But I think if your dad, and hopefully he is looking down today, he'd be saying, who is Brian sitting talking to? Anyway, some Tyrone girl, but you know.
He did do something before he left. He took me into the solicitor in Ballyshannon, Pat Britton. And Pat Britton set up to tell me that I had to stop playing county football. 1967, and I told him I would stop playing county football. We had good club football with St. Joseph's, and I stopped playing county.
Why did he tell you to do that?
He was afraid I'd get hurt.
Right.
And that I had children and I had the responsibility of the hotel. So I made him a promise I wouldn't, but sure, he died the following February. And Donegal were struck one day, and I got a call from the county secretary, would I go? And sure, he didn't have to ask a second time. My mother never stopped me. course, she had a brother played for Tyrone and Derek Moore, so she had that gene in her. So way I went back to football, and sure that's the rest of this. I'm still a madman. I'm still at it.
You still love the football, and there's definitely, like, whenever Jared, my husband, knew I was coming to speak to you, he's like, make sure and ask him this. And I said, no, Jared, this isn't about football, it's about business, but it's played a big part in your life and community as well. Yeah. The Dig podcast needs your help. Did you know that we have thousands of people download the podcast each week, but still people haven't subscribed or followed on the channel? So I'm asking you, if you listen on Apple or Spotify, if you could hit follow. If you listen on YouTube, then hit that subscribe button. It means that I can reach out to even more guests, bring even more actionable advice that can help you in your business. Do you ever have a vision for 6 hotels?
No, where this thing started to grow was we built up this not only dinner dance business, but wedding business.
Okay.
And at that stage, my mother and father didn't want to do weddings during the summer. And there weren't that many available during the winter. So I learned to there was a maple floor in the reception of the hotel, so I cut out the carpet, the maple floor, and I used to roll it over, and I had seats that would sit on top of it, and they used to dance in the lobby of the hotel for the weddings. There weren't a lot of wedding venues at the time, and that grew and grew and grew. So there was a big hotel next door called the Hamilton Hotel. The Hamilton family were another generation of people, market people, and they sold it to an Englishman, Ormond, and he wasn't doing well with it. So I went in next door, and he had a big chunk of ground at the back of the Hamilton Hotel there, and he used to keep pigs and cattle and stuff like that there. So he had a dairy that wasn't being operated, and it lay next door to my kitchen, and it would have been a great extension to make a function room. So I did, and I asked him, would he sell it? And he says, Brian, he says, I won't sell it to you, but I'd sell it to the hotel. He says, I have no money. He says, that's your problem. So that was 1970, just at the start of the trouble. So I went looking for the money. I was only a young buck at the time. And of course the banks threw me out. AIB, my own bank in Bank of Ireland. So I went off to Dublin, and I was going down Bank Street, and I went into Hire Purchase Company of Ireland. Money was 8%. And a man called Charlie Grayson, who used to fish here locally, there's great salmon river here, and he knew my mother. So he gave me the money, but it was 12.5%. I'm talking about being lucky. I remember Porrick McShay got married on the Saturday. We took over the Hamilton on the Saturday. And within 3 weeks, the banks went on strike for 6 months. But Charlie Grayson's operation was open. So I had a good cash flows. So I had the debt paid off before the summer was over.
Wow.
So then came a man called Paddy Ruban, who was the youngest bank manager ever, and he was placed in Bundoran. So after the summer was over, it ran into the following year before, where everything was manual in the banks before things came right. And there was a man called the Bargain King across the road, and he had plenty of cash, and I had plenty of checks. So I gave him the checks, and he gave me the cash.
What a way
to go.
Do business.
But unfortunately, tourism was going down at the time.
Okay.
So I needed to get stuck in, and I got the cheaper money from Paddy Ruban. And ironically, Paddy Ruban died quite young, and his eldest son is married to my eldest daughter, and his eldest son is a bankman too.
Okay. So it's certainly not as easy to get money these days as it would have been.
No, not easy. It wasn't even easy then, and particularly a young fella like myself.
Yes. But you sounded like a risk taker, were you, Brian? As in
yes.
Fearlessness, maybe?
A wee bit of fearlessness, you know.
Yeah.
And my mother was there, and my mother would never hold you back.
She would never what?
Hold you back.
Right.
Away you go, good Carmen woman. A
Carmen woman, yes. And how important is that? You need the people behind you encouraging you, don't you?
There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But it was difficult when we bought the Hamilton because tourism was just going down due to the troubles. But in '75, we had 3 national conferences, which were great, Trades Union and Teachers Conference. And that gave us some cash flow. And I wanted to upgrade the hotel, the old Hamilton Hotel, because it was well run down. And I built 40 rooms of bath. It was unbelievable. We're fortunate we given some grant aid as well. And in the process, I built a function room. And Paddy Cole, a great musician, came to me one day. He was staying in the hotel. I was at college with his wife, and said to me, do you know what you should do? You should start doing dances. So I said, I know nothing about dances. He says, there's a man called Tony Lockman from Castleblaney. He'll book it for you. So Tony Lockman booked it for me, and the first person playing there was Big Tom.
Big Tom.
And you know, when we went into the function room, we were so tight for time. there was no ceiling on a third of it, and there was no roof above it, but the weather was good. And Big Tom was there the first night, and the second night was Philomena Begley, a distant relation of my own, same vintage as myself. And then we had a young family. They played about Brendan Grace
Brendan
the
Grace.
third night.
Yeah.
And then we had the Platter Men. We had I didn't know anything about it, but I kept going, and the ballroom done quite good. And things picked up, tourism picked up, and at the same time, I was making a good enough money on the door to further extend the hotel and upgrade the hotel, which was great.
And is that about, sorry for jumping in, but again, I'm seeing that you created an experience for the community to come to that helped the hotel. Yes, tourism was going down, but you were also creating a space for them to come to experience something good.
Well, we had a great Sunday night dance.
I know, but you created that though.
And, with the help of Tony Lockman, because I knew nothing about bands.
I know, but
but
you were willing to embrace that.
But I enjoyed it too, because I enjoyed country music as well.
Yes.
So, and then, we had the singing pub as well, so they both fitted together.
Okay.
And then I started to do a bit of pop music on a Saturday night, so it fitted together. So I got a big rig inside to suit the pop music. It wasn't that great for country music, but it was something there that was there to be for the younger set.
Yes. And then, so tell me then, how did we move on to the other hotels? Like, what was the journey there? Like, how did the Great Northern come to be? And
well, I only just got started in the Holyrood with the rooms with baths and the thing. And in '76, my brother-in-law, who was a great Cork footballer, Mick Burke, came up to head during the summer. There was another bank strike in '76, and he came up to handle cash affairs, and he got involved with my brother Sean, and he done all the cash for being in the bank himself. And Sean and him got friendly. And next thing, the Great Southern Hotel, the Great Northern, came up for sale. And I remember it was about a fortnight before Christmas, Sean came across to the Holyrood. He says, Brian, he says, Mick Burke, and I think we should buy the Great Northern Hotel. I said, Sean, I'm up to my neck and neck. I says, I need this. But we need your hotel experience. So eventually I capitulated, and Mick Burke gave up the bank and came up to live here. And we opened up the hotel in '77. I had a third, Sean had a third, and Burke had a third. Burke was a Cork man, and he wanted to move south. So after 3 years, he moved south, so we bought him out. So in 1982, Sean came to me, he says, look, some of us should take the charge of the hotel, because I was busy in the Holyrood. And he says, I'll buy it off you. And I says, fine. I was happy enough to sell the hotel. And we had lunch in the Holyrood, we agreed a price. And he said he'd pay me half after the summer and half the following summer. So you'll either pay me all.
This is your brother now we're talking to? Uh-huh.
We have a great friendship.
Yes.
Sean was Sean. So he says, you wait there, I'm going up to talk to his wife, Eilish. Come back, he says, the hotel's yours. Just come back, and I went up and I told my wife. She cried. She said, I'll never see you.
Oh.
Never see you.
And what do you mean? So it went from him buying the hotel off you?
To sell it be all within a period of an hour.
And I wonder what happened. Do you ever know what happened there that caused that change?
Well, he knew that the hotel needed
You?
full-time attention.
Yes. And that was what you were good at?
Yes.
So now you have the Holyrood and the Great Northern. Talk to me what happened next to get a timeline here.
Well, then my younger sister, she was a late child, and she married Philip McLean, and he was a young trainee manager. And because they got married, the two of them, and they done a lot of good work in the hotel for me, and that took a good bit of work off my shoulders. But a lot of work had to be done in the Great Northern, and with the help of the finances, the Holyrood and the Great Northern, we built it up. But the Great Northern's an hotel that needs a lot of money constantly. It's like the Forth Bridge in Scotland. You paint one side and you have to go back.
Yes, because it's vast in size.
Yes, vast in size. So I was kiting along. Now, in the intervening time, I was managing a Donegal team.
Yeah.
I first became a player manager, by the way, and then I became a manager. And it was helpful enough, the fact that Philip and Mary were there when I went back as an overall manager of the Donegal team. So then I got sacked.
From?
The Donegal team.
Right.
I haven't been sacked once before. So I was looking around, and there was an hotel for sale in Sligo. My second daughter done hotel management, Catherine, and she decided she wanted to go to America because she thought that Shawnee, the third boy who was doing hotel management, will be coming back into the hotel in the Holyrood. And she got all ready for the States, and this hotel came for sale in Sligo. And I went in at a moment's notice and I bought it. Now, it was all about bankrupt, so I was buying a bankrupt hotel with a lot of debt. So I didn't even know what the debt was. So the first call I had the day after I bought it was go down to the tax office and pay off the tax that was outstanding on it. So I put poor Catherine at 24 years of age into this hotel that needed a huge amount of work. And she used to cry because there was always cangos going into the hotel, knocking walls, extending stuff. But she got through, and she's still in there. And it was there beside the station, and she runs a good operation there just beside the station. It's the old Great Southern Hotel.
Great Southern. I've never been, but I'm going to make it a point of visiting there now. I know the history.
We're a very pleasant and good hotelier.
Very good.
And very strangely, my sister Mary married Philip McLean in the Great Northern. And then my daughter Catherine married his brother. So the sister and daughter married two brothers, both hotel managers.
It's in the blood, isn't it, Brian?
So they were in there in the Southern Hotel,
and then we have.
Then I went back to football.
Then you're back to football, and we're going to talk about that in a wee minute. But and then we also have Yeats Hotel.
Yeah, well, that's what I was coming to.
Yes.
Then I got out of football.
Okay.
And I was at a loose end, and
So we'll take it back. So the football, you were, for anybody who doesn't know, the manager of the.
I won in All Ireland.
You did.
And I retired about 18 months later.
Yes.
So I was at loose end, and this chap, Sean McLafferty, I knew him through the business. He says, Brian, he says, a great hotel in Westport. He says, it's just ideal for you. Now at that stage, I had another son-in-law married to my daughter, Joanne. And he was doing sales and marketing. She done hotel management at Polly in Belfast. And they were living in Galway. And he was relieved over a Christmas period, and so he took up sales, and he's done a very good job in sales. He was an hotel background in Carlow. And we headed off. I had 3 row seats in the car for football and with the big family. And we headed off for Westport at the most stormy day. And on the way down, Catherine started to cry because the branches blown out. And she says, turn back, Dad. I says, I'm on my way and I'm going. So on we went. Went in and we looked at the Westport Woods Hotel. And I can remember looking at Michael Lennon's face, and a smile ear to ear.
Who's this, the previous owner?
No, my son-in-law.
Oh, your son-in-law, yes.
And I got in the car and I drove to Dublin. I met the man that owned the hotel and I bought it. And I wrote him a cheque for 100,000 as a deposit.
In what year?
In 1995. And the chequebook was only good for 5.
Tell me, the cheque was what?
It was only good for £500. And I wrote for 100,000.
So how did you get away with that?
I went down to the bank manager, but at that time bank manager could make decisions. So I told him how I was going to service it. So we opened up in Westport, and a short time later then this hotel in Ross's Point, owned by the same people, came for sale. I had a daughter, Fiona at the time, not an hotelier, an academic, married to an army man. And it came up for sale without even thinking. I bought it. It was for a reasonable price out in Ross's Point. Lovely area, Ross's Point, if you're ever in it.
I have, yeah.
So before I knew, I had 5 hotels. I never set out to buy any of these. It just came up.
So, and it's not that you're a risk taker. You're like, what did I say at the start? You've got this passion and drive. Like, it's in you there. I can see that. Like, who just sees a hotel and writes a cheque for some money they don't have, and then goes and tells the bank man he's going to get them the money? Like, that's guts. What is that?
Madness.
Madness. Well, whatever it is, it worked. But I think the work ethic and the drive and the passion is there. You knew it was going to work, Bran.
Well, then we had, at that stage, built up a fairly good hotel in the Holyrood and in the Great Northern.
Yes.
So there was substance there.
The model was there.
They were backing up these other hotels, let's be fair about it.
Yes.
And the Southern came on its feet very, very quickly.
Yes.
It was a lame duck originally, the Southern, but then we made it into a good operation.
Yes.
So they were there to back up the other 2 hotels we bought.
And sometimes I used to have a shop, Brian, right? A clothes shop. And I always had this vision that I would have another one. And I would have another one in different towns. And I would have got advice from people over the years. And I never did have another one. I went online instead. But somebody said, if you have a good business, if another one's poor, it can suck the life out of your good one. Is that right? Or
Well, it could do that if you don't mind it.
Yes. Yes.
You have to put the effort in.
The effort has to go in.
It takes time.
Yeah.
But you see, the advantage I had family.
Yes.
So there was family in the hotels. I had my sister here in the Great Northern along with Philip, who was an hotel person.
Yeah.
And then as the children were growing up, they would work here in either the Holyrood or the Great Northern.
Yes.
So that was a great boost to us as well,
So,
having your own.
when your daddy was laughing at you for filling the hotel with your children, it actually was great way you were actually moulding them to be part of the empire.
Well,
No, without knowing. This week's podcast is brought to you in partnership with Wild and Free. And it's so appropriate, actually, that Wild and Free are the sponsor of this week's podcast, because I was speaking to Brian McEniff in his beautiful hotel, the Great Northern, up on the hill there in Bundoran when you drive in, and it's on the Wild Atlantic Way. And that's where I love to go to switch off from work and the world and just feel like you haven't a care in the world, really. And Wild and Free is all about that. It's about kind of connecting with nature and the outdoors and feeling kind of at peace. And that's definitely over the summer anyway, what Jared and the children and I, and what we plan to do in the winter too, going for walks. But all the gear that Wild and Free has on their website, wildandfreeoutdoors.com, you'll see it if you go on. It's all like lovely hoodies, and the cobe especially, that's the coat stroke robe. Jared loves it. Loves getting in and out of the water, is obsessed with his cobe for that. And then the kids too, they just love having them, because when they get out of the water they can then keep them on to go for walks and stuff. Now, I don't get in the water, as many of you know, but I love to have that cobe on for the long walks along the seafront. And just, oh, look, life's so busy. We all need to just switch off in whatever way we can. And that's definitely the way I like to do it. So I love teaming up with Wild and Free in the podcast. It gets a message out there about what they do. And if you want to go and have a look on their website, wildandfreeoutdoors.com, they're offering a 15% discount to everyone that listens to the Dig podcast. You just have to enter DIG15. So thank you to Wild and Free for sponsoring the Dig podcast this week. And we'll be back with them again very soon. Brian, community, like you've talked there about the people, like you're very much part of the local sporting scene and throughout Ireland, and but you have employ so many people across your hotels, and without the community and the people, I think business is nothing. But I mean, your hotels certainly wouldn't be where they are today. How important is community to you?
Community is very, very important. Like here, like I would have stood for the town council way back in '74. It was family were Fianna Fáil, and they were short someone to stand for it, and I went for it. And I enjoyed the town council because that time we could manage things, we could manage our rates and stuff like that there. And then my brother Sean ran for Europe, and he was precluded from running for the council, so I stood for the county council as well. And being a county councillor, I must say I didn't enjoy the county council. I enjoyed housing, but other than that I didn't particularly like it. But after 2 years he came back in and I got out of the county council. But I would always be very much committed, still am committed to the local community, whether it's through the football or anything else that's taking place in the community. I want to be part and parcel of it. I want to help where I can help. Bundoran's a great wee town. I love my town.
It is a great wee town, but in all the other towns you're in as well, the amount of people that you bring in to be part of that McEniff kind of legacy is unreal, and you can feel it when you go in with the hotels that I've been in anyway, and Westport Woods, Skylon, Holyrood. Like, it's there. It's all about the people. So you've built that on your family.
Still, I go around the hotel.
I know.
And I go around the restaurants in the hotels to talk to the people, and I go around the pubs in the hotel.
That's important, isn't it?
And I was here last night for the concert, and I was here 2 weeks ago for Daniel's concert, and I went around and I stood at the door and I saw all the people out, talked to as many as I could.
So is that, I'm going back to your early days of being front of house in Toronto.
Yeah.
You know, like that's there, isn't it? That experience you gained.
Well, you see, when I came home the first summer, myself and my wife went into the kitchen to help, and I realised it's more important about front of house. So I got a chef in to work with the ladies as well, and I went out front of house, which was of benefit, because while you're on the ball out the front, you can't see when you're in the kitchen.
So true, isn't it? And it's about first impressions too, especially in the hotel industry. When I was coming in here today, I told a person that we were going to be having this, a girl that I met that knew me. I said, I'm going to meet Brian McEniff, you know, in for an interview. And she says, oh, he was here last night at the concert.
Yeah.
So, and I hope you don't mind, because I asked you before, you're going to be 81.
I'll be 81 the 1st of December.
1st of December. And age is nothing, because you're still very much a vibrant part of this, and I can see that. But you give so the hotels have kind of all been now in your trustee of your children. I mean, your children are now running them and own them. What advice did you give? I know probably there wasn't.
Well, we didn't cover the Skylon.
We haven't tell me about the Skylon.
I would have stayed with the Donegal team there as a young player manager in 1972 when we won our first Ulster Championship, ironically against Tyrone. We went to the All-Ireland semi-final. We stayed in the Skylon. Then, roll on the clock, I stayed many times in the Skylon, although I was more a south side person, and I had an apartment in Dublin that I bought, and my sister Mary, she was a teacher, and she moved back to run the Great Northern Hotel, so I bought the apartment of her, because she couldn't sell it. The property market was very low at the time. So she organised a loan for me with the First National Building Society. She had a friend in there. So I always liked the Skylon, although it was north side. So I spoke to PB Doyle's daughter one time about the possibility of buying it. And things were going well. Next thing it ran cold, and I didn't ever understand at the time why it went cold. But I discovered later that Doyle's were joining juries together as a group. And that's why it went cold. So when they amalgamated, I talked to my brother Sean, and we bought the Skylon, but we were made to buy the hotel in Waterford. So he took the hotel in Waterford, and he done terrible well on. He sold to a Cork developer for a fortune, and I went into the Skylon, and I love the Skylon. I still love the Skylon. I call it a country hotel in the city. And my daughter Tara, who was the only one to a boarding school, and I always said to her, "You'll never make a living by the sweat of your brow." So she became a journalist, and she worked with the Belfast Telly, and she worked with UTV, gathering news.
Tell me what you mean by that there. You'll never say that saying again?
You'll never make a living with the sweat of your brow, because she went to this high-class school.
Okay.
In Wicklow.
Yes.
So now she finished up, she married a Belfast man who was in an hotel in Belfast, and they stole them out of Belfast down to the Skylon Hotel. So they're living in Dublin at the back of the Skylon Hotel, and she's back working in the hotel business, Tara. So if you're ever in the Skylon, anyone, ask for Tara or Shane.
I will.
They run a good show, and it's a good, comely hotel, the Skylon.
It's because McEniff's are in the mall, and they're all part of you.
All family.
It's all family.
It's all family.
There's a lot to be said for that. You know, there's a lot of growth in hotel groups, but the family element is perhaps not there. So it's very different, isn't it?
It's key to it.
It is. You know, I don't think I've ever spoken to anyone that has that kind of, influence in each hotel with their own blood. So it's amazing to hear that. What advice do you give them, Brian? Like, they obviously have all trained, a lot of them.
They're all trained in the business.
In
fact, the girl that you met, Mary went to the hotel school for a while, but she did her household management.
Yes.
Teaching how to be a housewife and stuff like that there. And then she went into beauty, and she had a lovely beauty salon, but then she had one child, then she had a second, so that went by the wayside. So I invited her back in to do sales and marketing in that hotel, and she works in the Holyrood 4 days a week with my son Shawnee, and Shawnee gets her to do a up house, which is most important, because bedrooms are the most important, and she's a meticulously clean girl, so she does that as well. So she's still, for by the 5 that are in the hotels, 6 that are in the hotels, she's still in the hotel business herself.
Yes. And if they were all sitting here right now in front of you, and you were not going to be in any of the hotels again, what advice would you give them for the success to continue? Have you one piece of advice that you would give to your family? Not that they probably need it, but what would you say to them?
I'll give people good food and good service, and take care of the people, talk to them. It's all about communication skills.
It is.
Because people want to see you.
Yeah.
And if they have a complaint, it's better that you get the complaint on the spot and deal with it than getting a letter later on.
I seen an article recently, and I know we didn't talk that I was going to write this. I didn't write this down when I was sent you questions we were going to talk about. Where a man, and it was in the same kind of industry you're in, and he said the customer isn't always right. What would you say? What would you say about that?
The customer isn't always right, but you got to convince him that he's not too far wrong, I thought.
Okay, I love that. Yes, absolutely. Because I was thinking when he said that, I wonder how he gets around that with how he approaches things, though. So, that's good advice.
My mother would have been quite different now as a Carrickmore woman.
Yes, what would she have said?
She might be confrontational with the customer.
You can't do that either, I suppose, in this day and age, especially.
But back in that time, it was possible.
Of course.
But not now.
No.
People have different standards nowadays.
They do.
Very good houses and good homes and good bedrooms, and they expect things to be very good for them.
Absolutely, but it's about convincing them as well that what the right way is. So, 10 children, fabulous sporting career, 6 hotels. We all talk now a lot about work-life balance, Brian. Is that possible?
It is, and the roll into football, which took a huge part of your life, particularly the last time I went back there, it was 35 hours a week. Now I know that team manager talked about 50, 60 hours a week, but it took up a huge amount of time. But I had a good wife and a good mother, and I tried to mix things as best as possible and grow up the children, like I remember taking Shawnee, who runs the Holyrood now, as the eldest boy, taking the matches. He was only 7, and sleeping on Cotty's Aunt Julie's feather bed the night before the line with Porrick McShay, his mother's his own woman as well. We're great friends, Porrick and myself, and I just had good times with them growing up, and we went on holidays together. Actually, we went to Florida when I couldn't afford to go to Florida, but I spread the money out, and away we went, and we went back again a couple of years later. We took 6 the first time, we had 8 the second time. We never succeeded in taking the 10 because of the age divide that was there. But we went great holidays and great times. But we would have gone to the Canaries with the whole plant, and the grandchildren now would always be talking about, why not do it again? They do forget that I'm getting on in years.
Yeah. Well, it is hard. You could forget that easily because you're, very much, I don't know, I can't see you ever being any different than you are now, Brian. But so that work-life balance, I struggle a bit with 3 children and my work. It's not that I struggle with my mind, the guilt of sometimes not being there.
Well, I have a great wife.
I know.
A very special lady. The pity you haven't met her. I think you met the eldest daughter, but
I did.
Wife is a very special woman, and she's magic. And we just have a nice life, and have a good time over the last period of time because we're spending more and more time together. I can't go out of the house now, but I get a phone call or I phone her to see what's going on. And
so that obviously support helped you through all them years then. So it's about having good support networks, isn't it?
Without a doubt. There were difficult times, so when the football was there, because you were given a lot of time to the football, and I was very focused on my football, They were difficult times to get over, but I got there. The bit of success helped as well. Although she didn't go to All-Ireland final.
She didn't?
She was afraid that we might lose. In fact, when I was leaving the house on Saturday, she stood in the jam of the door and she says, Brian, any way that you can get ready that you'll be beaten tomorrow. And I said, woman, we're not going to be beaten.
Oh my God.
I was so sure that we were going to win.
Yes.
I was super confident, but I had the boys that way as well.
Yeah. Well, that's what it takes, isn't it? Belief. Yeah. In business and in sport and in life, doesn't it?
People always say, how did you know? When did you know you were going to win? I says, I had a call from Sean O'Neill, the great down footballer, the Sunday before. He got me at the reception in the great Northern Hotel. And I was talking to him and I could feel the hair on the back of my head stand. He was that sort of infectious man. He was a wonderful footballer and I had great mass on him. And he talked about McHugh, who was our top player, going down the barrel of the gun, right down the centre of the Dublin defence. So when McHugh went down the barrel of the gun for the 3rd point, I says, that's when I knew that we were going to win that All-Ireland. But I knew it before.
You had the belief?
The belief that we could beat the Dubs in their own home patch.
The same as when you took on each hotel, you had the belief, that it was going to succeed. I think that's in you, isn't it?
It is.
It's in you. You can't really learn that.
I never set out to do this. Like, it wasn't, there's no way I dreamt this at all.
I know. And we're going to wrap it up soon because I know you're so busy, but I spoke with a man called Pete Boyle. He owns a brand called Argento. Don't know if you've ever heard of Argento, but he's got like 54 shops. It's a jewellery shop up north, but he's from Strabane, great man. And he said that he set up in a market stall in Strabane. He went to Ballyshannon to the market. I'll send you maybe the link for you to listen to it. And he started to sell jewellery in stalls in Ballyshannon. And now he is this like, what is it? This is like 150 million turnover business. But he says, I never set out for this. I just loved the selling on the stall, but he had the belief from the very start. Yeah. And that's what you remind me of.
He worked
hard.
He worked at it. Like, even when I had the dances that time used to finish at 1:30. I'd be at home. I live at the back of the Holyrood still. And I'd be home at 2, 3 o'clock and have a cup of tea. She'd wait up until I come home. And I'd up the following morning then. I was a horse at that time. That's my wife used to call me. I was a horse. I could do all those things. And
She called you a horse?
no, she told me I was a horse.
Because you were so strong?
I was strong. Football kept me fit, and I didn't drink and I didn't smoke, so I had a relatively clean life, you know. And
so you were up early the next day?
Up early the following day. And then, of course, my mother was an early riser. She could be up at 6 o'clock in the morning. And she worked in hotels. She was into her 90s.
Yes.
And played bridge, a great mind.
Wow.
So she taught me how to do my sums. That's what I got.
Which was so important.
Oh, yeah.
The sums.
Mighty woman.
Oh my, it's all about the people before us, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, she was special. The pity was I didn't get more time with dad, you know, to see. Because he was gentle. He was the other side of the family, you know, and he was very gentle. Small man in stature.
Well, you're making him very proud today with everything.
Oh, he was very special. But we had a very good, close family. My eldest Sean then, he was the longest serving county councillor in the country. And he had extensive business. He's the Allingham Hotel. He's the Errigal Hotel in Letterkenny. And
I didn't know that.
family as well.
Okay.
And then he's got the 2 hotels in Dublin as well. So we're hotel people as well.
You are hotel people. You are the man to come to.
Sean was great. I miss him. He died.
Oh.
But he was a mighty man. Many's a row we had.
I'm sure.
When we were playing football as young boys.
That's life.
We were competitive. But then my second brother Liam was a doctor, and he's still alive, thank God. And then my brother Pat, the dentist, but he died during the COVID.
Oh, did he?
And he was a great character, a lot of fun. And then my sister Mary, she was the baby. And she has great health at the moment, but Philip, her husband, is so good to her. Very special man to do what he does for that girl. She fell going out to Mass one morning. Her head hit the locker, damaged her brain, which was very sad, you know. But
family means a lot, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
I could sit and talk to you all day about all those stories, and I think with age comes reflection. Sometimes when we're in the middle of it, you don't look back, whereas you're looking back on all of that now.
Oh, yeah.
It's unreal to hear that, you know what I mean?
But it's great that I have a great memory.
You do?
God, I have a great memory, and people always ask me questions.
Yeah. One more question and then we're done. What was the hardest thing through it all? What was the biggest challenge through all those years, do you think, Brian, of being in business?
I suppose there was recessions. There was recession with the trouble in the north. There was the recession in the 80s and 90s which came through, but then there was that big recession came in 2006, 2007. It was very, very difficult because we had good borrowings at the time, and it was tight, very, very tight. But we came through it. The family took us through it.
Family.
We rolled up our sleeves and we just got stuck in, and we done it. We had a lot of meetings going on, and we supported each other. And even during the lockdown there some time back, we had meetings on the phone 2-3 days a week. The whole family would tune in there. We'd have good discussions about what we were going to do and how we were going to tackle this recession. And we got through it.
You certainly did, and that's a whole other podcast that we could do another day, but you might never have me back after I've kept you this long.
No.
But what I want to say is the future, Brian. So I was listening to a podcast on the way up here, and it would scare you, some of the things that they're talking about the future of work and business. It's exciting, but it can be scary. But things change. Things are changing so fast. Like, you go into businesses now and they're not how they looked last year. They're not even how they looked last, 6 months ago. What do you see the future of the hospitality industry?
Well, it'll always be there, the hospitality, because people will go on holidays, let's be fair about it. But with the way that life is moving and the way business is moving consequently, it's difficult. But I was a very bright son called Shawnee in the Holyrood, and he keeps us all switched on. He's very much up to speed with things. It was great to have him there.
Like, I know you say you chair a lot of the meetings and stuff. Has that been a discussion about the future of what the hotel groups looks like?
Yes, that's very much so. Because we have to move with the times.
Yeah.
And even ahead of the times. Just
ahead of the time.
Keep abreast of things. You have to be ahead of the times to keep abreast.
Certainly, and I do speak to a lot of people. Some people stick their head in the sand about different things, perhaps the online world, perhaps the artificial intelligence is coming, and no cash. I went on a trip to London there, Brian. It was my 40th birthday, and I'd saved up money, and I said, I'm going to take it out, and I'm just going to spend that wee bit of money on myself in London. I couldn't spend it. I couldn't. No one wanted my money.
I'm chairman of the club, football club. I sell a lotto for them at Super Value every Saturday. I enjoy selling it because I meet all the people as well as everything else. And we are now at 80%. the card. It's only 20% cash,
Yeah.
and it's getting smaller and smaller
Yeah.
every week. Even for €2,
I know.
I haven't got €2.
I know. So that's the future.
That's the future.
But you can't stick your head in the sand about it because it's happening.
My
So it's
son
how do you
Shawnee
move?
My son Shawnee says there's another step coming. So
Yes, I need to get Shawnee on next.
just exactly, he'd be a good man to interview.
For sure. Brian, thank you so much. I never thought, when I was driving as a young child with my mummy and daddy in the back of the car, I never would have envisaged that I'd be doing a business podcast and speaking to you, seeing you on the TV for years, watching obviously the football, but to have you sitting beside me, I don't take it for granted what an honour it is for you to tell me all of that.
Well, I'm just the most regular person
I
that
know.
you can meet.
I know you are.
No airs and graces.
I know.
None whatever.
And no one really should they? But
Not
you
at
will
all.
meet people who do have that, but you're certainly not one of them.
No, I would hate to be even thought of that way, you know. Just
You're
the
not- you
most
would-
regular, down-to-earth person.
You would never be. And I just
No.
want to say thank you. Hopefully this isn't the last time that we meet. And I just want to thank you for being a guest on the Dig podcast.
And say a big hello to that GA husband of yours.
I will, for sure.